In the previous videos, we introduced simple linear regression as a way to estimate the relationship between two variables in terms of intercept and slope. If the slope is significant, then the relationship is significant. But even if we find a significant relationship, that doesn't mean anything by itself. Remember, you can fit lines to anything. The measures shown in a regression table are based on a set of underlying assumptions. Before you draw any conclusions, you have to be able to defend these assumptions. I'll briefly repeat the assumptions, and then I'll show you how you can diagnose problems. In case of violated assumptions, refer to the overview at the end for possible alternatives. Independent measurements means that we have observations from distinct experimental units, like the height and weight of 30 different individuals. Linearity means that the relationship between the outcome and the explanatory variable can be reasonably approximated as linear, at least within the range of the data. Normality means that if we would take our regression line and flip it over like this, the errors we make follow a normal distribution along the regression line. Constant variance means that the variance of this normal distribution does not change as we travel along the regression line. And finally, we should also check for outliers. How far is an observation removed from the rest? So how do we assess whether these assumptions are reasonable? The first step is not to look at your data nor any kind of statistical measure, but instead take a moment to reflect on the origin of your sample. What kind of study is this? How did you collect these data? Can observations be reasonably assumed to be independent? Is the outcome continuous? Can we reasonably expect individual differences to have a central tendency? Or was normality perhaps not a realistic assumption in the first place? Step by step, go through the assumptions and try, as best you can, to justify them without any kind of statistical measures. Only once you've convinced yourself that this could be a reasonable way to model the relationship is it time for the next step, and that is visual diagnostics. I will discuss 4 plots in this video that are part of the standard output in R. If you prefer, in the description you can also find a script to recreate these in Python. The residuals versus fitted plot is used to assess deviations from linearity. In case the relationship is perfectly linear, then you would just see random, normally distributed noise going from left to right. It works by plotting the remaining distances from the model, the residuals, against the predicted values by the model, also called the fitted values. The idea being that if there is some structural relationship remaining in the residuals, you would see that as you go up or down the regression line. The blue smoothing line is only sometimes helpful. It can also pick up small bumps or dips, but that rarely means anything. You need to see a clear trend going from left to right to conclude nonlinearity, like in this example of a quadratic relationship. When in doubt, there are significance tests for nonlinearity, like curvature tests, but be warned that these can also go off when you have different problems unrelated to linearity. So if you want to use a test, always look at the diagnostic plots as well. The second plot is a quantile-quantile plot. This will take a moment to explain, so let me start instead with how to use it, because that is actually fairly easy. The straight line shows where you would expect samples drawn from an exact normal distribution. If your residuals are more or less normally distributed, then they more or less follow the line. That's it. The confidence band around it just helps you judge the severity of deviations from the line. In this case, most observations fall within the confidence band, so we can conclude the distribution of the residuals does not deviate significantly from a normal distribution. So how does it work? Our model was fitted to 30 observations, so we also have 30 residuals. Suppose you have a true normal distribution. Where would we expect 30 samples from this distribution to fall? Well, anywhere really, since a sample is just a random draw. But not every region is equally likely. So how about we divide this distribution into 30 equally sized parts, and then use the location of those 30 parts to represent the theoretical value on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, we use the values of the actual residuals. Where these two meet is what you're looking at in a QQ plot. We can add a line and a confidence band for ease of judgment, and there we have it, a simple method to check for deviations from normality. QQ plots are tremendously useful because they not only tell you whether there is a problematic deviation from normality, but they can also show you what kind of deviation. For example, this is what left skew looks like. This is right skew. This is heavy tilt. And this is a light tilt distribution. If you're in doubt about the severity of non-normality, you can use the Shapiro-Wilks test with the same warning that tests can go off for various reasons unrelated to normality. So if you want to use a test, always use it in conjunction with visual diagnostics. The third plot is called a scale location plot. Like the first plot, this shows the residuals on one axis and the values predicted by the model on the other. Unlike the first plot, the residuals have been transformed in such a way that we can easily look for non-constant variance. If there is a clear increase going from left to right, then that means the variance increases as you travel along the regression line. Though rare in practice, the opposite is also true. If there is a clear decrease going from left to right, then that means the variance decreases. Since the residuals have been standardized in the scale location plot, you can look at the actual values on the y-axis to make your assessment. A change from left to right of less than 0.5 means the variance is as good as constant. You'll often see some wiggle in the smoothing line even if there is no issue at all. Only a consistent change of 0.5 or greater means the variance is not constant. If you're in doubt, the Breusch-Pagan test is also commonly used to assess non-constant variance. Be warned though, that non-constant variance may be significant, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is problematic. So also look at the numbers on the y-axis of the scale location plot. That brings us to the fourth and final diagnostic plot. The residuals versus leverage plot is used to detect outliers. On the y-axis, it shows the residuals. A larger residual means a greater distance from the line, means the observation is more outlying than the rest. But the influence of an outlier strongly depends on how far the observation is removed from the rest in terms of the explanatory variable. This is called leverage, and that is what you're looking at in the residuals versus leverage plot. With that in mind, which of these three observations do you think is most outlying? Let's use the residuals versus leverage plot to find out. On the left, I'll show the data and the fitted model, and on the right, I'll show the corresponding residuals versus leverage plot. The first example is an observation with a very large residual. Still, since it's close to the rest in terms of the explanatory variable, it has low leverage, and hence only a small effect on the resulting model. The second example has very high leverage, because it is far away from the rest in terms of the explanatory variable. It pulls hard on the estimates, but since it is in agreement with the rest of the observations, it has a small residual and still does not affect the resulting model much. Lastly then, the third example has both a large residual and high leverage. As a result, it tilts the entire model towards the outlying observation. This combination of a large enough residual and high enough leverage that leads to an influential outlier is encapsulated in the Cook's distance. A Cook's distance greater than 0.5 means the observation is at least anomalous and warrants further investigation. A Cook's distance greater than 1 means the observation is significantly outlying and has a lot of influence on the resulting model. If you don't see these boundaries in your plot, that means you don't have outliers, because what you're looking at is the same plot but zoomed in on your observations. If the boundaries of the Cook's distance are even beyond the plotting area, then clearly none of the observations are outlying. Dealing with outliers is tricky, because they could very well be valid observations. Generally speaking, you don't want to remove outliers. The only exception to this is when you have valid reasons for removal other than the Cook's distance. For example, Maybe this individual is way older than the others. Maybe the value is simply unrealistic or clearly an error in data entry, like a height of 15 meters. Such reasons can be used to omit the observation from the analysis. But if you can't find such reasons, you should not remove outliers. In summary then, we have 4 diagnostic plots to assess the validity of a simple linear model. So, what about the most crucial of the assumptions? Independence. Whether your observations are independent from each other or not is unfortunately not something you can check visually. There are exceptions to this, like when you have a time variable or a spatial variable, but there is no general way to detect dependent data. That means you have to think about this assumption by considering how these data were collected. In this case, these are all distinct individuals. Sure. But what if they all came from one of 3 families? In that case, there is a source of dependence, because we can logically assume that within a given family, there might be a different average height. As a closing remark then, it's always a good idea to try and justify all assumptions from theory, in addition to any diagnostic tools. A diagnostic plot cannot demonstrate that an assumption is true. At best, you did not find a significant deviation. Imagine you interview someone and ask them whether they hate apples. If they answer no, that does not prove that they love apples. We just failed to find evidence against their love of apples. So, while these diagnostic tools are very useful, you still have to be able to defend your choice of assumption from theory. When an assumption is violated, you'll have to resort to an alternative method, like the ones displayed in this overview. That concludes this video series on simple linear regression. Thank you for watching.